Dear Diploma CET aspirants, today we'll see operating system subject. This operating system carries total 10 marks. For CET, they included some portions of operating system, some part of process scheduling and synchronization concept, deadlock, then some memory management systems. In process concept, we will be studying process concept, what is process, how it works on our system, then process scheduling, what are the different operations we can perform on any process, then most important topic is inter-process communication, then process scheduling concept, scheduling criteria, then scheduling algorithms. This all covers in process concept. The next part is process synchronization. In process synchronization, we'll be studying the background of synchronization, then what do you mean by critical section problem and its management, and what are the semaphores. Then we'll be moving from synchronization to deadlock. The meaning of deadlock, what is the meaning of deadlock, and what are the characterization that deadlock to occur, what are the different methods for handling the deadlock, then deadlock prevention, how do you avoid the deadlock, once deadlock occurs, how you detect the deadlock, then once you detect the deadlock, how you are going to recover from that deadlock. That all covers in the chapter deadlock. Then some part of the memory management they have covered. First concept covers swapping, then contiguous memory allocation, paging concept, structure of page table, then segmentation, demand paging, then copy and write, then some page replacement algorithms and its concept. The last concept in this operating system syllabus is allocation of frames. Here in this overall operating system syllabus, the most important part is your process concept, process management concept, and one or two questions come from synchronization. At least two questions we may expect from a deadlock, and we may also expect some questions from our memory management, 2 to 3 questions, but more questions we may expect from the process management systems. First we'll begin with introduction of our operating system. What is operating system? Operating system is a software that act as an intermediary between user of the computer and computer hardware. It's an interface or intermediary or mediator which act as an mediator between your user and computer hardware. Whatever the message user gives, that will be forwarded to the computer system. Whatever the result the computer system generates, that will be given to the human being or the users. This operating system act as an intermediary between user and the hardware of the computer. The purpose or objective of an operating system is to provide an environment in which user can execute his program in a convenient and efficient manner. If we see this diagram, we have a computer hardware. In computer hardware, and we have a number of users. If any user wants to send some give some input to the computer hardware, it has to go through the operating system. And if computer processes any data and it wants to give a result to the user, it has to come from the operating system. So operating system act as an intermediary between our computer hardware and the user of the computer. Now let's begin with process concept. What is exactly meaning of process? We need to understand what is the process and what is the program. When any program starts executing, that we call it as a process. Normally the process is defined as program under execution is called process. What is meaning then? What is the meaning of program then? Program is nothing but is the set of instruction that performs the specific task. When I store any program on disk, it simply a program or a file. When I bring that program into the processor, when it starts executing, that program becomes a process. What are the parameters that process includes is program counter, process stack, data section, heap. What that program counter holds, that program counter holds the address of next instruction to be executed. Then process stack which contains the temporary data such as function parameters, return addresses, and local variables. Data section contains some global variables in a program, and heap is one more important section or parameter in your process. That heap which is memory that is dynamically allocated during the process runtime. When I execute any program during runtime, the heap will allocates the memory for a program. Simply, a program is a passive entity and process is an active entity. Sometimes he asks this question: program is dash dash entity or process is an dash dash entity. Program is a passive entity because until you don't execute, it becomes a passive. When you start executing that program, it becomes a active. So that active entity we call it as a process. Next is process state, very important. If you understand this diagram, you'll come to know what exactly process is. Once the process is been created in a system, process are different types. Process are user process or kernel process. Some processes are foreground processes or some processes are background processes. Whatever the processes, once the process is been created, as a process executes, it changes the state. The state of process is defined in part by the current activity of the process. A process may be in one of the following state. Once the process is been created with the help of fork system call, then that process can be in one of the state. There are total 5 states: new, running, waiting, ready, and terminated state. The process enters into a new state when it is being created. Then it goes to the running state when processes start executing a program. Then the process can goes into the waiting state when the process is waiting for some event to occur, such as IO signals or reception of any signals. The process can goes into the ready state, that is the process is waiting to be assigned to a processor. Then finally we have, once the process completes its whole task, it will goes to the terminated state to finish its execution. If you see this diagram, there are total 5 states. Once the process is been created, it goes to the first state, new state. Then it can move from that state to ready state by admitting from new state to ready state. It means that the process is ready for execution, but some other processes are running on the processor, so it has to wait in your ready queue. If the processor becomes free, the scheduler will allocate the process for processor with the help of dispatcher. While running on the processor can have many options. It can complete its task and goes to the terminated state by calling the system call, exit system call, or it can directly goes to ready state by having some interrupt in a system. Otherwise, if any process wants some IO operation or events, then it can goes from running state to waiting state. Once they got the IO operations, then it goes to waiting state to ready state. If you understand this diagram, some question paper he has asked the sequences of states. You need to remember the sequence of this process state diagram. it has first it has to come from new state to ready state. From ready state it directly goes to running state. It won't go from directly terminated state or waiting state. From ready state it goes to running state, but from running state it has three options. It can go to the terminated state by completing its task completely by calling the system call called exit, or it can goes to from running state to ready state if any interrupt occurs. Otherwise, the running process can waits for some IO operation. That time it goes from running state to waiting state. If it got some IO operation, then it goes from waiting state to ready state. Next is process control block. For every process, once the process is been created in a system with the help of fork system call, each process has its own process ID. That process ID is unique. Each process will have its own process control block. Process control block is also called task control block. This process control block has so many informations. First is process state, process program counter, CPU registers, CPU scheduling information, memory management information, accounting information, IO status information. Process state, any process can be in one of the 5 state. As I said in previous slide, it may be new state, ready state, running state, waiting state, or terminated state. Program counter, which holds the address of next instruction to be executed. Now we have some CPU registers. This process control block has some CPU registers. Those are also called general purpose registers. Depending on the system architecture, we have the number and size of the CPU registers. Then we have CPU scheduling information. Now what type of CPU scheduling are you using? Round robin? Are you using FCFS? Are you using priority scheduling algorithm? Are you using shortest job scheduling algorithm? Such type of information will be there in your CPU scheduling information part. Next is memory management information. What sections of information the process has taken into your memory, that detail will be there in your memory management information. Then accounting information. Accounting information says how much each process has acquired the memory and who is using that particular memory by whom processes. That all information will be there in your accounting information. And one more information related to process control block is IO status information. Suppose any process can open a number of files. Such information will be there in your IO status information, how many files each process has been opened. Next concept is process scheduler. Suppose if any process wants to execute on processor, some software has to allocate that process for the execution. That is done by the process scheduler. That processor scheduler selects an available process for program execution on the CPU. CPU is nothing but it is a processor. It selects the any particular process for program execution by applying some scheduling algorithms. Next, we have different types of scheduling queues. Normally 3 types of queue we have. Among this, we will get one question for examination. The first queue is called job queue. As process enters the system, they are put into a job queue, which consists of all the processes in the system. Once the process is created and enters into the system, initially that process will be put into the job queue. The job queue will contains all the processes within the system. Next queue is called ready queue. The processes that are residing in main memory and are ready and waiting to execute are kept into the list called ready queue. Some processes are being created but they don't want to execute, they will be kept in job queue itself. But some processes are want to execute on the processor, they will be brought into the ready queue. Normally for ready queue we use the concept called linked list. Next, last type of queue we call it as a device queue. Those are also called IO queue. The list of processes waiting for a particular IO device is called device queue. You might be experienced in your printer. Suppose I have given a number of jobs for the printer. Those requests has been stored in your device queue or IO queue. Once the process is allocated the CPU and is executing, one of the several event could occur. Once the process is being executed on the processor, there are some chance some event could occur. The first possibility is the process could issue an IO request and then be placed in an IO queue. First it has to issue an IO request and will be put into the IO queue. Suppose if I want to take a printout, if printer is not available, then my request will be stored into the IO queue. Second possibility is the process could create a new child process and wait for the child termination. The one more possibility is any process can create a new process. That new process we call it as a child process who has created the process, new process, that we call it as a parent process. Now that created process or the parent process can wait until the child process terminates. The third option can be the process could be removed forcibly from the CPU as a result of an interrupt and be put back into the ready queue. There is a high chance of, if any child process or any process wants to occupy more memory allocated by the parent process, that parent process can forcibly terminate the child process. If any interrupt occurs for particular point of time, the CPU or that system operating system forcibly removes that process from the processor and will be kept into the ready queue. If you see this diagram, we will understand this process. If any process wants to execute on CPU, they will be put initially in ready queue. If any process is executing, it has some possibility, it can directly complete a task and go out from the system, or it may request IO, and if it requested IO, it will put into the IO queue. Then if IO satisfied, then again it will come back to our ready queue. If any process has met the time quantum in your round robin algorithm, time slice expired, then it will taken out from the CPU, again will be put into the ready queue. And one more possibility is if child process is being created by the parent process, no, until the child process execute, parent process has to wait. So that will be taken out from the CPU and put into the ready queue again. The last option is if any interrupt occurs at the CPU while executing any process, the currently executing process will be taken out and again put back to the ready queue. Next is schedulers. We have different types of schedulers. Among these, one question is fix. The selection of process is carried out by the scheduler. Who is going to do that? The selection of processes from the ready queue, it is done by the scheduler. Scheduler is going to pick the processes and allocate that process for execution on the processor using the some algorithms. There are three types of schedulers. We have long term scheduler, short term scheduler, medium term scheduler. Long term schedulers are also called job scheduler. Short term schedulers are also called CPU schedulers. Medium term schedulers are also called swappers or swapping. What this long term scheduler does, this selects the process from this pool and loads them into memory for execution. Initially we have seen job queue. Those job queue has all the processes within the system, those long-term schedulers will pick the process from job queue and allocate those process for execution. Such type of schedulers are called long-term schedulers or job scheduler. Another type of schedulers are called short-term scheduler. These short-term schedulers are also called CPU scheduler. These schedulers will select from among the processes that are ready to execute and allocate the CPU to one of them. These are short-term schedulers. They will want to execute in real time. Such type of schedulers are called short-term schedulers or CPU scheduler. One more type of scheduler we call them as a medium-term scheduler or swappers, or sometimes they call swapping. We have two concepts under this scheduler: IO bound processes and CPU bound processes. You need to remember these two concepts. Sometimes he may ask this concept. IO bound processes are the processes they spend more time doing IO operation than execution. In constant contrast, CPU bound processes are the processes they spend more time on execution than doing the IO operations. I repeat, IO bound processes are the processes they spend more time on IO operation than executing the processes. CPU bound processes are the processes they spend more time on execution than doing the IO operations. Next, process scheduling. In that we have context switch. They may ask the definition of context switch. What is the meaning of context switch? We have seen so many options. When any process wants to execute, it may get terminated by completing a task, or it may go from running state to ready state if any interrupt occurs, or any process can go from running state to waiting state if it wants some IO operation. Here in this case, that scheduler has to switch from one process to another process. Switching from one process to other process, we call it as a context switch. But if any process has not completed a task, it has to store incomplete task to some memory for its future execution. For that we have the concept called context switch. This context switch is the process of switching the CPU to another process by performing a state save of the current process and state restore of different process. Assume that there is a process called P1 and there is process called P2. Now this P1 is executing currently on processor because of some reason. Some reason means that P1 has requested some IO operation. Meantime, that IO device is not available. That time the scheduler will take out that P1 process and put into the waiting state. Now that time the scheduler will allocate P2 for execution. P2 has not yet completed a task. What it does, P1 will be stores its state in your process control block, and that scheduler will restores the state of P2 process from the process control block of P2 process. If you see this diagram, there are two processes, process P0 and process P1. Initially P0 is executing, suddenly some interrupt or system call occurs. We are going to store that P0 process state into process control block of P0, and we are allocating P1 for execution. What you do, we reload the state from PCB1. PCB1 will contain the information regarding P1 process. Once we start executing P1 process, again that P1 process wants or some interrupt occurred, we need to store the state of P1 process into its PCB. Again we need to reload the P0 process from its process control block. This concept we call it as a switching of the processes, or simply we call it as a context switch. In next class, we will be seeing process creation, then process scheduling algorithms, and some concept related to our interprocess communication. Thank you.